All righty, welcome to the August 14th, 2023 Lower Makefield Planning Commission meeting. If we could take roll call first. Adrian Costello.
I'm here.
Anthony Bush. Colin Coyle.
Here.
John DiLorenzo.
Here.
And Tejinder Go here. All right, first on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the June 12th, 2023 meeting. Is there any comments? Motion to approve?
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 12th, 2023. Second.
I'll
All
second.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here at that meeting. We're gonna flip the order of the agenda, so we're gonna go with number 4 first, the point land development. And then, is there any, I guess, any questions, or are you gonna go through all of? Okay.
Good, thank you, and thank you for the courtesy of allowing me to go first. I'm Ed Murphy. I'm here. To my immediate left is CT Troilo, and to CT's left is John Richardson, the project engineer. And we're here tonight to not seek any type of action, but to update the Planning Commission as to where we stand with regard to the recent round of review letters that have been issued. I think everyone on the board should be well familiar with the project as it has been one that has been the subject of numerous public meetings and conversations over the past 3 or 4 years. We've had many CT, unfortunately. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to go, but unfortunately for him, he had to go to numerous HARB meetings to talk about various iterations of the project. And I think we're now at a point where we have consensus about that. And we've also had multiple meetings with the Planning Commission. We've been to your zoning hearing board and been to the supervisors over the years with different plans. But I think, again, based on the zoning hearing board decision, we have a plan that is now been engineered that is in front of you that I think is one that has met with favor from the various stakeholders that have considered it. After the zoning hearing board rendered a decision, John's office engineered the plans based on that decision, and the review letters that we have received in late May and June and August all are reflective of review comments based on those submitted plans. We've had a chance to, not me, but CT and John have had a chance to talk to folks about the comments, and in the overwhelming number of comments are all will complies, and those revisions will be reflected in the next set of plans that we submit for everyone to consider. But we thought, based on those review comments, that there were a couple of planning type issues that are the subject of inconsistent recommendations among your own consultants that we thought we should try to clear up before we go much further.
So, Mr. Murphy, just so we're clear, other than the comments you're going to discuss now, everything else would be a will comply?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's talk first about emergency access. We have a comment from the fire service director suggesting that we need to provide one on Langhorne Yardley Road, and I think that's inconsistent with the recommendation of your traffic consultant, and I think the staff as well. So, John, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that one comment.
Just that during previous consultations with the township boards, especially CT, it was directed that the frontage along Langhorne Yardley Road, they didn't want parking lots for. Get closer to the microphone. In previous consultations with the township and board, CT especially was given the recommendation that the township would not like to see driveways and parking lots along Langhorne Yardley Road. That's why the site was designed to prevent any parking lots or entrances on that road. We understand the need for emergency access and perhaps a secondary entrance or exit. But the plan in its current configuration is essentially what the township had directed us towards. So we're looking for direction moving forward.
Jim, do you have the ability to put the plan up on the board? Maybe we can highlight for the planning commission members where we're talking about it, and we can show you an area that some have suggested might be appropriate, but John, maybe you can approach and just highlight where it could be.
So our understanding is the fire marshal would like an emergency access only through here out to Yardley Langhorne Road. The site is such that we can provide that if the township deems that they want that.
What's the, I guess the question is, what's the resistance to putting that there?
Just that we got direction from the township that they did not want parking lots or driveways along the Langhorne Yardley.
We will do it.
Yeah, there's no resistance on
Right.
our end.
The issue is there a consensus on the township side that that would be an appropriate modification to the plan?
My perspective on this is we had this discussion before with the Marazzo's condos that were built, correct? And they had to put that emergency entrance that's chained off on Yardley Morrisville Road.
We can do that, yes.
Yeah, and obviously I know it's not the most aesthetically appealing thing to me, but I think if I remember the discussions right from that, there's good, obviously, safety practice reasons for that. That I guess someone in the township will have to explain why it's not necessary here, but it's necessary somewhere else.
Okay, if that's the consensus, we'll do it. And it sounds like that is. If Adrian's speaking for everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody, but that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like, obviously, aesthetically, I probably would agree. I wouldn't want to see it there, and you obviously don't want something there, especially on that road where there's more people think they can turn on and off of. But I'm just going from previous experience now. Are there other board members who have a different perspective than mine? But that seems pretty straightforward. That having multiple access routes for public safety is probably something we need to have, correct?
Yeah, just looking over the code real quick that's referenced in the letter from Mr. Chamberlain. I don't want to overrule the fire service director and say, well, I know you think this is going to make people safer, but we'd prefer to have bushes. So
Right.
I would recommend that we follow that recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are there any other planning commission members who have different thoughts on that?
doesn't appear to be.
Okay.
Do you have any other traffic issues that you're
Yep.
going to address? Okay, good.
So go back over there. And the next one is the suggested mid-block crossing recommendation that we had received previously, but which the traffic consultant recommends against.
Correct. We had been requested that we provide a crosswalk across Edgewood Road. And initially it was, preferably at the corner, but it was quickly dismissed as not a prime location. So it was agreed to a mid-block crossing, which is a mid-block crossing is just a crossing exactly what it sounds. It's not at the corner. The township had directed us that they wanted that. We had added it in. I believe the township engineer, Andy Pokel, was not opposed to that, but the traffic engineer was.
The stated reason that he believes the mid-block crossing location would be detrimental to public safety.
The alternative is to put the crossing near a relatively blind curve though. So
The alternative would be no crossing.
Well, I think that's probably a bad answer when you have a restaurant across the street from places people live. they're not gonna not go, or they're not gonna drive there because there's no crosswalk.
And the grocery store is right there and any number of things. So
Yes,
given the options in front of us, it seems like a mid-block crossing is safer than the two other alternatives that are available.
yeah. Now, I might, might go back to the traffic engineer and say, if we have to have one, where would he recommend to put it?
Yeah, can I speak?
Yeah,
Yeah, my comment was it could be detrimental. So I don't have enough information to form an opinion at this point. We asked for speeds and turning movements at the intersection and along the frontage. So what we'd like to know is how fast vehicles are traveling from the intersection across the straight frontage, across this proposed mid-block crossing, and then how many people, and if there are any pedestrians crossing at that particular intersection at this point, perhaps we can formalize a pedestrian crossing at that intersection if it's needed anyway. So at this point, I didn't have enough information to say yay or nay, but I did want to say it could be detrimental depending on what the data shows.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Is Yardley Langhorne, is that a state highway?
Yes.
So is it possible to get a PennDOT approval to do one of those pedestrian lights like they have at other crossings? Where if somebody wants to cross, they have to push the button and then the lights go flashing to warn oncoming vehicles of a pedestrian walking?
Were you asking Edgewood or were you asking Langhorne Yardley?
For wherever the mid-block crossing would be for Langhorne Yardley?
Edgewood's not a.
Oh, Edgewood.
Yeah, the mid-block's on Edgewood. It's by
Okay.
the church and the groceries, the back road. into
Same
the grocery-
question. Is that something feasible?
That's a township road, not a state road.
No, okay, I understand that now, but is that something that would be more feasible to try to eliminate a public safety hazard?
Again, I don't know that we have a hazard. We don't know how many vehicles, how fast they're going, if there are pedestrians at the intersection. So I think as an engineer, I'd want to know what's going on out there before I make a recommendation as to whether we create formalized pedestrian crossings at that intersection of Langhorne Yardley and Edgewood, or does it make more sense if there's no one crossing over at Langhorne Yardley anyway, and perhaps the speeds are reasonable along Edgewood, that a mid-block crossing could be appropriate? And again, I wouldn't necessarily say we need to jump to a signal, but just, it just has to be formalized with signs, and striping and such. So at this point,
Paragraph 2 of Joe's letter asks for that info about speed studies. So I guess with that info, maybe we can all make an informed judgment about.
Before we do that, I mean, I think the township needs a lot more information, not necessarily from the applicant about where to do this, but I think either a mid-block crossing, but not one at the intersection, should really be looked at very closely, because one, there's gonna be a lot more vehicular traffic there when the Wegmans goes in on the other side of 295. Decent chance that giant shopping center gets redeveloped. There may already be discussions about that behind the scenes. And there are gonna need to be places, as I think someone mentioned, if they're gonna walk to a restaurant from across the street, they need to get there and they need to be able to cross there safely. And the crossing at the corner is probably not a safe idea when you go out there and look, and it's blind right now.
Just driving through there too. I think sometimes these pedestrian crossings give people security that's not really there. They think that because they're in the crossing, they're going to be noticed. And my concern is people are coming down and they're kind of deciding which way they're going to go, which side of the point. Then all of a sudden they look up and there's somebody standing there in the middle of a crosswalk. I mean, I think I understand the safety, but it may be actually doing the opposite of being safe, because
I think if
that Y is right there and they just got done maneuvering that Y. Do I go left? Do I go right? And then all of a sudden somebody's standing in the middle of a crossing.
I just have to think we have to come up with some sort of pedestrian crossing the street solution. Otherwise, we're just setting up a situation where jaywalking is expected.
correct. And I think we definitely need a crossing here. It's not a question you're putting apartments on the north side. you have destinations that the pedestrians are going to want to get to on the south side. Question is, where's the best place to have that crossing and what should be done for it? So
I'm thinking
that's kind of why we're looking for more data.
further from the why, I'm thinking, in other words, let people get on that road, what's the name of that road, Township Road? Edgewood, get on
Edgewood.
Edgewood, as long as possible before they see a crosswalk.
Probably need to
It's-
do also, I was thinking lighting also, if there is gonna be a pedestrian sidewalk. I don't know. It seems like it's pretty dark now, that area. So I don't know as far as additional lighting or those type of things for people crossing at night.
Well, it sounds like based on Tony's comment, we need to wait for the township to do its thing a little more specifically before we decide whether or not we're going to include it or not. So you guys can work on that. We'll revise the plans, and when we come back, you can tell us yay or nay on, or in between, about the mid-block crossing, if one's going to happen. All right, so.
Is there
Um,
anything being put at the end then also where Yardley, Langhorne and Edgewood meet there? Cause I thought there was, in original plans, I don't think I was at the last meeting, but in the original plans, I thought there was gonna be a structure there.
We had a site meeting at the site with the township engineer, and at that meeting, he recommended that we install a pork chop island at the intersection that would direct people coming down Edgewood to kind of turn to the right, almost be perpendicular to Langhorne Yardley, to increase the sight distance past the historic structure on the corner. Other than that, there's no improvements, if you will, at the intersection.
But that brings us to another comment, that we should at least acknowledge. It is not a battle that we're going to fight. If Joe wants to fight that battle, he can, but item number 1 in his traffic review letter suggests that the building at the corner be removed.
I felt like I was out of line because I just joined and I haven't been part of this
That ain't
process. And I did a
anything
site
for-
visit and I said to myself, why are we keeping this building? What
Well-
value? I mean, that's a pretty dangerous intersection. Nobody can see anything. I'm not, not doing anybody's bidding here, but it was just my perspective when I was there that day saying, this is ridiculous. The building's falling down and you can't see anything in that intersection. And we're gonna, spend money, or we're not spending money. You're gonna spend money to fix this building, and I don't think it does anybody any real benefit. That's just, I haven't been part of the how many years process of trying to, have this go through, but that was just my perspective of going to the site visit that day and say, what are we doing with this building here? And I mean, it would create so much visibility at that corner if it wasn't there.
Just to be clear, your position is you're not touching that building, and that's largely because of.
Position is we are following the recommendation of Harb to keep it.
So
Yes.
John, this has been going on for 20 years where there's
Yes.
been a discussion of saving the historic buildings there. And there's one of these letters says that, I don't know, 40% of the 40 of the historic buildings that were there that are part of the historic district are no longer there. So these 2 buildings, including the one that's falling down on the corner, is a historic building.
All right, so this is just my.
But I'm with you on the, I think the fact that the visibility would be improved tenfold if it wasn't there, and how much.
We all
historic
agree.
Value.
Yeah.
Look, if this decision's been made, that's fine. I'm just, as a new
Yeah.
member here, having taken some time out to go to the site, my perspective is that building is not helpful from a safety perspective, and certainly there's no economics to it. And we have to really, I guess we've already decided that calling that building an historic building is more important than visibility on that intersection. If that's the case, then that's the way it is, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember this conversation from the last time you were in front of us about it. But I think I asked the question like, why can't we move it? And somebody, I think, made the comment that for whatever reason, there's something about the structure, it can't be moved. Is that correct?
I think if I remember correctly, I think it has to do with historical content, and that one, even though you're saving the building by moving the building, you're decreasing the value of the village or something along those lines is what I remember.
Is it worthwhile, since the township is also looking at plans for Patterson Farm? Like, I get the point that it's the Edgewood Village, it's in the geographical location of the village, and therefore there's the context. But is it worthwhile to ask the commission studying Patterson Farm to consider relocating the structure there so that at least the structure is preserved?
We are not interested in wading into yet another battle for another decade about.
That's understandable.
And the other thing is too, this is privately owned. Patterson Farm, I believe, is township owned property.
Well,
Talking two different things.
Yeah.
You're saying somebody to do a study to direct a private owner to bear the cost of moving.
no, I wasn't directing anyone to bear the cost, right? Just to see if there's a solution here to combine two efforts occurring at the same time. But I certainly understand with this development why they wouldn't want to wait for that process to complete to move forward.
So,
And we
again, I
could-
guess,
We
Go
can
ahead.
make a different recommendation than Harb. I mean, Harb's recommendation is that the building stands up and doesn't come down. We could make a different recommendation and then it's up to the
Yeah.
supervisors to. do
and,
that.
and I get and to that point, Tony, I just have a question. And again, I'm just trying to go back to my memory bank. So I'll ask it this way. Has the discussion ever happened to just relocate that structure onto somewhere else on the same plot of land?
That has been discussed. The Historical Commission and the Historical Architectural Review Board were not in favor of that, as someone mentioned earlier, that would ruin the historical context to the building. The building has been there since the 18th century, so it has at least 250 years of being there. With that road, I think Edgewood Road has been there for at least 150 years. And so I think that was one of the issues involved with moving that. It sort of ruins the character of the building.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been involved in those discussions, so I'm not going to play Monday morning quarterback on that. But I mean, New Hope did it with Odette's, and it seemed to work out just fine.
Can I speak up a little, as a traffic engineer? I went out and took a look, and when you pull up to the edge of Langhorne Yardley Road, you do have adequate sight distance looking left and looking right. It's only when you stop back at the stop bar, you can't see to the right because of the building. The problem is if we bring the stop bar up to the edge of Langhorne Yardley Road, we could be creating a problem with left turning vehicles wanting to get onto Edgewood Road from the north. So that's why another reason why I want to ask for volume, see what's going on, what kind of truck traffic is turning there before we make a recommendation how the best way to control that intersection is, because, you know, the modifications being considered could negatively affect the intersection. Right now, you stop at the stop bar. By the vehicle code, you need to pull up to the edge of the road and look right or left when you can't see. In this case, when you pull up, there's plenty of sight distance left and right. You just can't pull out to the intersection from the stop bar. So
you either
not-
violate the law or you make a safe turn. You can't comply with the law and make a safe turn.
no, you can comply with the law and make a safe turn. That's the point I'm making. You stop at the stop bar and then you pull up because the
Okay.
building's blocking your sight distance. We don't want to move that stop bar closer because then it interferes with the traffic wanting to turn left from Langhorne Yardley Road onto Edgewood Road.
And
Just
so,
tell us where you want the stop bar and we're done.
yeah, I think this might be solved if this would probably involve PennDOT because Yardley Langhorne's a state road, but just to put a no left turn sign there for people heading up towards, right? Who are heading up from Mirror Lake. It eliminates your concern around the left turn being blocked by the individual moving forward. On Edgewood.
Where would they make the left?
You can make the left at, you could come up Mirror Lake Road, which is the prior intersection to the north and east here, right? You can come up Mirror Lake Road and then turn on to Edgewood if you need access to that short parcel of Edgewood.
And I believe the issue is mainly with trucks. So is it possible to ban trucks from making that left turn or petition PennDOT to ban left turn for trucks?
Yardley did it.
Well, Edgewood Road is our road, so if there's the need to ban trucks, we could certainly do that.
And I think we're addressing your express concern for left turns from Yardley Langhorne onto Edgewood, right? So if we eliminate left turns from Yardley Langhorne onto Edgewood, that safety concern is eliminated and it's a sign instead of anything more expensive.
Well, let me just, I guess I'm not clear on my concern. My concern is this development is creating pedestrian movements across Edgewood Road to the south. So they need to be able to safely do that. How do we best accommodate the pedestrians wanting to cross that? Until we have the data as to how many vehicles, how fast they're
Yes.
traveling, how many people are turning at the intersection, as an engineer, I can't give my opinion as the best way to get pedestrians
Yes.
from the north to the south. So my letter is asking for the applicant to provide us with the data that we can make a recommendation that is best for everyone involved.
That's
Okay.
good. That's kind of that's where I am. I mean, look, I'm not expert enough to come up with where the right location is, and whoever the experts are, the traffic engineer needs to have the data and the applicant have the data so they can determine where is the best place to do it. So I think it's in everyone's best interest that it's somewhere.
I think it's a combination of township and the applicant collaborating on identifying what data is relevant to make an informed judgment about that. So what Tony said, what Joe is saying, I think we need to collectively figure out that. So we'll work on that collectively.
Okay.
The last thing that we want to highlight is in the EAC letter, and this happens all the time, and I'm going to defer to Paul's office, is EAC frequently disagrees with your office about managing stormwater and calcs and all that. So in the past, we have deferred to you to resolve any issues that are in that EAC letter about that. So that's item 3 that you can deal with. And item 4, the recommendation for the use of pervious pavement in the parking lot. That is not something we think is a good idea, given the likely amount of use that parking lot's going to receive. Historically, porous paving works best in low volume, low use parking areas. We don't expect this to be one of those. So I don't think it's an appropriate location for this application. We would prefer and just continue to use the typical macadam paving for that. Those are our comments on the multiple review letters that we've received.
So everything outlined in the
Second
RVP
time, yes.
letter. Well, the reason I'm asking is because if you go to go to page 4, items 39 and 40 specifically mention the green space under the zoning ordinance. And I just want to make sure we're clear that that's going to be will comply.
Plan has it and we comply, then yeah. Okay, anything else?
Yes, a couple things I'd like to add. So I was at the site last Friday, and there's been a question about existing trees on the neighboring property.
Correct.
So we would just ask for confirmation that the larger specimen trees won't be affected. Actually having landscape architect, arborist required to go out there and take a look to confirm there won't be any impacts to those trees that are proposed to remain. That's one item.
I think CT has talked to that property owner and he can address that.
And I guess just further, one thing you would also want to consider, since you'll be making revisions to address that matter, for the stormwater detention basin that you have, I would advise to help pull that away from the property line. So it looks like you have adequate space in the parking area to make it more slender and longer, just to avoid disturbance of the tree roots.
Correct. I actually spoke to the neighboring property owner, and I kind of agreed that we would look into that. And we have plenty of space. We can definitely pull that away. That's not an issue.
And it seems like you'd have adequate cover as well. So, so that's great. So basically, yeah, the confirmation of the trees, revising the basin, and then one other thing, there was a request for a waiver to not provide curbing. So our office reviewed that request, and what we'd advise, if can be reconsidered. I see there's wheel stops for where there's parking. And then there's portions of the parking area that obviously are not curbed. So we feel that curbing would help for those areas, and also especially would help direct stormwater to be captured. So obviously there's potential impact with the roots. So it's a tight balance, but something to consider. And especially the area that doesn't have a wheel stop further to the north. I don't believe there's as much of a risk to the trees there, but again, when we have someone out there to confirm that, I believe the tulip tree was what of the largest concern, and that's kind of further south. So I would just consider if any curbing can be installed.
We can look into it.
Okay, I think we're at a point where we'll revise the plan. You guys fill us in on what you're looking at in terms of mid-block crossing in post. Working on revised plan.
Mr. Murphy, if you could use the microphone, we're being frantically waved at by our amazing AV team.
Okay, so what I said is we will commence revision to the plans. We'll wait and coordinate feedback with the township about the info we need for mid-block crossing. We'll address the other comments, and if we have questions, we'll be back. But the expectation is the next time we come back, we would be looking for a recommendation from the planning commission so we can then go to the soups. So, all right.
Any other questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Or do I need a motion?
I don't believe in a motion is necessary. I believe the initial review is as Mr. Murphy has indicated, so that they can come back and submit a revised plan. Mr. Murphy, the extension letter expires September 30th. Are you intending to supply an additional letter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to discussion of the Bucks County Planning Commission comments on proposed amendments to the subdivision and land development ordinance related to open space definitions and requirements. Someone presenting that, or?
I can make some comments on it. I mean, I don't think it's anything too cumbersome. For comment 1A, I have no problem taking out the definition for open space. The definition for open lands will be a little short, but I think that's fine. 1B, that's pretty simple. They just want us to change unremediated to not been remediated. So again, that's just a semantics thing. I can quickly make that change. I'll jump to number 3. Registered landscape architect, proposed section 178-80A requires all major subdivisions and land development plans to contain a landscape plan. We recommend that township officials include a provision that requires a registered landscape architect. I guess I would leave that up to the planning commission or the board of supervisors, but I'm fine with putting that explicitly in the saldo if you'd like.
I personally am in favor of that one.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, by practice, most plans that come before us have a registered landscape architect work on them anyways, right? So it's just
Yeah,
codifying what's already
Okay.
happening.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Then for 3, we're okay with 3, or?
That was
Sorry,
3.
2.
Yeah, I think that's also just kind of some repetitiveness, so I can kind of just make it more, you know.
Well,
We actually had a conversation about number 2,
Mhm.
extensive conversation about making these consistent with one another
Oh, yeah, okay.
in both places. And that was part of our recommendation to the supervisors when we made one in June, or maybe it was before that. I'd be in favor of ignoring that recommendation.
Oh, because that's what we were doing, right?
right, so
That's what this-
that's what I wanted to bring up. They're saying, rather than having these comments in both zoning and Saldo, pick one.
Okay,
And
yeah.
this board was concerned that it could be more confusing if it's just in zoning,
Okay,
not in subdivision and land development, so.
yeah, that's why I skipped that one because I was confused, clearly, yeah. Okay, yeah, so we can ignore number two. But other than that, I can make the quick changes and then work with Barbara's office for advertising. Cool.
I don't think this has been, has this gone, this hasn't been approved yet for advertising by the Board of Supervisors, has it? No. So when it's in front of the board and they make the recommendation, Dan can work with my colleague at the office to prepare the appropriate notice, because under the MPC, you have to have very specific description of the ordinance to be considered. So he'll work with us on that. But I think other than that, it's pretty cut and dry.
Any other comments? Any public comments? We need a motion for this one, Barbara, or?
It may not hurt to say that you're accepting the recommendations of the Bucks County Planning Commission as to items 1 and 3, and direct the township to make those revisions before submitting to the Board of Supervisors.
I'll make a motion that we make that motion.
The
I'll
fancy
sec-
way of saying it is so moved.
I'll second that motion of the motion proposed.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, and I guess anything else we have on the agenda? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All right, thank you.
All right, guys.